Has anyone ever tried to tell you that old growth logging in Tasmania is a thing of the past? That we don't do that kind of thing anymore? Well, they're wrong. Every day, giant trees, entire forests of them, are cut down, put onto trucks and shipped off the island. Just how much old growth forests are on the chopping block over the next 3 years? Currently, Sustainable Timber Tasmania has around 6,000 hectares of old growth forests ready to be logged. That's around 1,000 mcgs of irreplaceable forests, critical habitat for endangered species, and the most carbon-dense forests in the world that Sustainable Timber Tasmania is going to log in the next 3 years at a huge financial loss. Sustainable Timber Tasmania has stated that they've made some real changes about how they manage old growth forests. They only did this because of the tireless campaigning by community members, volunteers and environment groups that exposed the senseless destruction behind locked forestry gates. And let's not forget about Sustainable Timber Tasmania's embarrassing failure to get crucial FSC certification. Only after all of this was Sustainable Timber Tasmania forced to change its ways. Sadly, all these changes boil down into 3 categories: dodgy accounting, unconventional remapping of coop boundaries, and the ever-present corporate and political spin. In 2017, Sustainable Timber Tasmania moved to no longer clear fell and coops it branded coops containing old growth. The capital letters are important here. What is a coop containing old growth? Sustainable Timber Tasmania defines this as a coop containing more than 25% old growth. This means if a coop contains 24.9% old growth, it's not classified as a coop containing old growth, and Sustainable Timber Tasmania gives themselves permission to clearfill it as if it contained none at all. What does Sustainable Timber Tasmania use to identify coops containing old growth? Well, Sustainable Timber Tasmania has maps that they will not share with the public. This makes it very difficult for community members to keep track of what's happening behind locked forestry gates in our public land that they have locked up. Here, in a recently highly contested coop DU015A, which saw brave members of the public stop work for almost a week, we can see these unconventional mapping practices in plain sight. Strangely, coop DU015A consists of 2 completely separate logging areas. Coincidentally, one area contains 30% old growth, with the other containing 11%. If these 2 separate areas were indeed 2 separate coops, the management and logging methods used would be dramatically different. But lumping them into one coop means that Sustainable Timber Tasmania can clearfill them with no documented loss of old growth whatsoever. Remember, a coop containing less than 25% old growth is not classified as a coop containing old growth, and Sustainable Timber Tasmania can clearfill it as if there was none at all. Now you might be thinking, at least the coops containing old growth, the ones containing more than 25% old growth, are safe. Well, that's definitely not true either. Sustainable Timber Tasmania has absolutely no problem at all logging vast areas of pristine old growth forest. They've just invented a new term for it: aggregate retention. Aggregate retention is still clear-felled logging, except now there is some unlogged areas around the boundary of the coop. It's crucial to remember that the outcome of both of these harvest methods is exactly the same. Sustainable Timber Tasmania is still taking chainsaws to ancient forest. They have simply redrawn the coop boundaries and relabeled it from old growth clear felling to old growth aggregate retention. You should also assume that next time they come to harvest that coop, it will not be a coop containing old growth, because it will be less than 25% old growth, and they will clear fell the lot. Given all we know about the extinction and climate crisis, as well as the growing body of scientific evidence that indicates logged forests burn more intensely than old growth forests, why do we continue to log old growth? Sustainable Timber Tasmania acknowledges in their own publications that they need to log these areas of old growth to meet inflated contractual obligations. These contractual obligations were set by Guy Barnett, the member for Lyons and the Resources Minister of the Tasmanian Liberal government. In this fact sheet about old growth forests on Sustainable Timber Tasmania's website, it states, Sustainable Timber Tasmania needs this timber so to honour its contracts to supply high quality saw logs, veneer logs and special timbers to local sawmills. It's almost comical that Sustainable Timber Tasmania justifies old growth logging with this category of product, because these products make up such a small percentage of their total output. So let's break down those numbers and take a closer look at how our remaining patches of old growth forests are being managed by Sustainable Timber Tasmania. This was Coop 007C, 57 hectares of forest in total with 38% of it mapped old growth. 60% of the forest biomass was left on site as waste to be burnt and released into the atmosphere, so that's Sustainable Timber Tasmania's primary output. Of the 40% that had any use, 27% was wood chips used for office paper and other short life or single-use products like coffee cups. Then and only then do we start to see timber products of any value whatsoever being produced from this expensive, heavily government subsidised ecological destruction. It's no wonder at all that Sustainable Timber Tasmania loses tens of millions of dollars a year of taxpayer money when you see figures like this. The take-home message from all this dodgy accounting, unconventional mapping and corporate and political spin is one thing. In the year 2020, Sustainable Timber Tasmania, formerly Forestry Tasmania, knowingly and willingly destroys irreplaceable old growth forests at a financial loss to the Tasmanian taxpayer. We must end native forest logging now. Forestry Watch is an independent organisation of scientists and concerned citizens monitoring the activities of Sustainable Timber Tasmania. Forestry Watch runs citizen science surveys to engage the public and increase knowledge about how forestry operations are conducted in Tasmania. If you're interested in helping Forestry Watch, simply send us a message on the links below.